And hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of World Hockey Report here on this Thursday, June the 2nd. That is right, kiddies. June the 2nd. June. Hockey in June. It's so great, guys. That means we are getting closer to the Stanley Cup Finals, but not there yet. Have a few more games to go. Had another very interesting game last night. The Rangers downing the Lightning in a very big way. We'll talk about that game as well as previewing tonight's Game 2, Edmonton, Colorado. We'll be joined here shortly by one of our prestigious guests we have on today. Jam-packed show today, guys. I could not tell you enough. I couldn't tell you how crazy it has been over the last couple days and how many people we have on. I mean, it's insane to know how crazy of a day it is. But before we get to all that, by the way, we are going to try, I'm going to get a couple of our guests on here. Or we're going to have one of our guests here in just a moment. But two of our other guests today from the New York Times, we have Allan Kreda coming on and talk about the Rangers and Lightning last night. What a wild game that was, as well as none other than a big game. And we're going to talk about Adam Brownstein from the Morning Skate. We'll talk about not just the game last night, but also the game tonight here with the Inside of the Insiders, Tyler Kuehl here. Be sure to follow us, guys, here inside the Pro Rock Hockey Studios here on World Hockey Report at World Hockey RPT. And also, guys, I got to remind you, since it is Stanley Cup playoff time in the National Hockey League, and if you want to save some money on your next ticket purchase, because my goodness, not just inflation that are driving prices up, the playoffs are driving prices up like crazy. Be sure to sign up for SeatGeek and use the promo code WHR when checking out. It is that simple on SeatGeek. When you use the promo code WHR on your first purchase, you'll save $20. And I should say $20 Canadian for all of you folks. So yes, a little bit less on the American sides of things. However, over the last couple of days, we have not been saving on goals at all because, my word, the goaltending here, except for Igor Shesterkin, has been kind of shocking over the past couple of days, at least the first couple games in this series, including the game on Tuesday night. Now, yes, Cody Janzen and company talked about it a lot last night, but we need to talk about it again tonight because the goaltending is another question mark with what has developed as of this morning between the Colorado Avalanche and the Edmonton Oilers. So with that, I'm going to be joined now by a gentleman who is a member of the Pro Hockey Writers Association, as well as the writer for the Edmonton Oilers for The Athletic, and by his Twitter bio, a huge fan of the Tragically Hip. Gotta love that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to World Hockey Report, Daniel Nugent-Bowman. Daniel, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm well. How are you guys doing?
I am doing well. It is a beautiful day here in West Michigan. How's the weather in your neck of the woods, sir?
I'm in Colorado today. It's a lot nicer than it was yesterday. It was even the day before. We kind of had about I would say like 18 hours of rain, and it's cleared up and sunny now, so no complaints.
See, that's the thing about Denver. I have some friends there, Daniel, that live there, and they tell me it really sucks. It can rain for a day and a half or whatever, and then by like 2 hours after it's done raining, it's all gone. That's the perks, I guess, of the dry heat they have there.
Yeah, and it's also, I guess, from what I was hearing from my Uber driver yesterday, some pretty good, drainage and kind of situations and stuff too. So it sounds like the kind of in a bit of a valley, and the snow and rain melts pretty quickly, or it dries up pretty quickly. So that's pretty good, I guess, if you hate puddles and hate getting your boots wet.
Yeah, I know. Not like it is for us in the Eastern Seaboard, I tell you what. Be sure to, guys, to jump in the chat today if you have any questions for our good friend, Daniel Nugent-Bowman. Daniel, let's talk about, I want to get back to a little bit about Tuesday's game here in just a moment, but we got to address the news that happened this morning, and it kind of did come out of Tuesday's game as well. Darcy Kuemper left the game with an apparent upper body injury. Pavel Francouz comes in, and Jared Bednar this morning, we see that he's not on the ice. And he confirms, as Jared Bednar, no Darcy Kuemper in net tonight. Pavel Francouz getting his second start, of the playoffs in 2022. If you're looking at it from the Edmonton Oilers side of things, do you kind of get a little foaming at the mouth knowing that the backup is in here for Game 2 tonight?
It doesn't hurt. I would also say, though, that I don't think Darcy Kuemper's had a tremendous playoffs. And I mean, maybe part of that goes back to, obviously him having to deal with that eye injury coming out of Game 3, I believe, in the Nashville series of the first round. So certainly, if you do get a chance to take or face a team's backup, you want to take advantage. And the Oilers, I don't know if it matters who's really in net, quite honestly, the way they put up goals in these playoffs. I mean, you look at how well they played against Calgary and against Jacob Markstrom, who's, Vezina Trophy finalist, and they scored at least 4 goals in every single game of that series. So we all know how well the Oilers can score. It's a matter of them defending and keeping the pucks out of their net. That matters more than anything else. So I don't think they'll have too many problems putting up goals regardless of who's in net. But they can't keep allowing games of 9 goals or 8 as they did the other night and try to win hockey games. So that's the primary concern for this team.
Yeah, because it's very. At 14 goals in a game, 84 shots. I mean, my goodness, it looked like it was some game straight out of Edmonton, Los Angeles, 1983, 1982, circa. And I wonder, like, is this something that can be sustainable? Like, or is this one of those things like we saw in the Battle of Alberta where we see 9-6 in game 1, wild, crazy game, and then after that, lockdown? Like, what are we going to see tonight? What is Jay Woodcroft telling his team to not do to replicate what happened in game 1 here tonight?
Yeah, well, they're going to need to slow down. I mean, it's funny, the Avalanche, some of their top players like Rantanen and one goal McKinnon as well. Landeskog obviously had the empty netter, Kadri on a power play, but they can score up and down their lineup. It was the only guy who had 2 goals was Comfer. So they're going to have to slow down a lot of different guys. But I would say trying to contest Colorado's speed is going to be a major factor, and obviously the primary guys in that regard are Nathan McKinnon, and even from the back end, Cale Makar. I think the Makar Devon Toews pair did very well, primarily against Connor McDavid's line. So they're going to need to slow down some of these key guys, and I think defending off the rush is a huge thing for this team. Defending even off the cycle, I think there were some really extended periods, and some of those were even with McDavid's line on the ice that Colorado had the Oilers hemmed in their own zone. It's tough for obviously McDavid to shine the way he has in these playoffs if he's getting hemmed in for extended periods on shifts and stuff like that. So that's going to be a kind of a couple key factors, I think, in this game. And it's funny, like McDavid, had 3 points in that game, and I don't think too many people would say he played particularly well. So they're going to need to kind of get him going more in the offensive zone and really try to take over games.
Yeah, because he's such a dynamic player, and it's so weird. You look at a game where you score 6 goals, and you look at it as a downer, but there's a lot of people that were screaming after that game on Tuesday night, 8-6 loss. The starter gets pulled, Mike Smith gets pulled, Daniel, and some people are saying, Koskinen should start. And I'll be honest with you, maybe it's because I'm a former goaltender myself. I think you go back to a guy that got you this far. I don't buy the whole we gotta put the guy that allowed less goals in a very strange 14-goal game. I don't know about you, but I think Smith deserves to get back in net here tonight.
Yeah, why would you put the losing goalie in from game 1? I'm just kidding. Obviously, Koskinen got the loss. Unfortunately, just given the nature of how they do decisions, just for him allowing 1 goal. No, I'm kidding, of course, but I think I agree with you. Mike Smith, he was tremendous in the Kings series, fairly good. Obviously, he had some down moments in the Calgary one, getting pulled in the first game, and then the crazy goal from the other end of the ice that he allowed in game 4 that could have cost the Oilers the game, but they obviously responded and won that game. But he's had a lot more good moments than bad. Mikko Koskinen has only had 2 postseason appearances these playoffs in mop-up duty. Mike Smith, maybe you want him to stop 1 or 2 of those, but really the Oilers were under siege with him in net. He was certainly not the reason they lost that game on Tuesday night, and they are going back to him. I'm not surprised. I think it's the right call.
Yeah, because he's a veteran too. Like he knows that just because you have 1 bad game, he's not going to crumble. It's not a rookie, that's coming into his first Stanley Cup playoff. Sean Butcher jumped in the chat here, Daniel, saying he's the peanut butter man, we call him. He says, prediction 10-8 Avs tonight. We mentioned that it's probably not sustainable for sure, but these two teams have firepower, and we talk about that top line for Edmonton that's kind of gotten thrown together a little bit because of Leon Draisaitl's alleged injury. It's obviously something's hindering him here, but there's no question about it, Daniel. And this is where great stories are in these playoffs. Guys that fight through pain, even though after the season's over, it comes out that they had like 3 punctured lungs and a missing kidney. But Leon Draisaitl, with whatever is ailing him right now, the fact that he came into this series with 26 points, I mean, the guy is unreal, even when he's not 100%.
Oh yeah, I mean he can't. We haven't seen evidence yet that he can shoot that one-timer on the power play, which is a huge weapon for this team when they have the man advantage. And for him to be, as you mentioned, to be racking up this type of offense, all these points. 26, as you mentioned, going into this series is remarkable considering he's clearly not at 100%. We think it's a right ankle injury that stems from getting taken down in Game 6 of the first round against the Kings by Los Angeles defenseman Mikey Anderson there. But he's found a way, and I think he's kind of looked better as the playoffs have progressed here. I thought he was moving a lot better. The last couple of games of the Calgary series, I saw no real signs of distress in Game 1 against Colorado. The thing to me is if somehow, and we again, Draisaitl didn't skate, and the way the lines were situated in practice, Devin Shore took his regular spot as a placeholder. We think he's going to be back with Connor McDavid, and they did move Evander Kane up there as they had partway through the game on Tuesday night. So it looks like McDavid, Draisaitl, and Kane will play together. But if there's some way at some point in the series that Draisaitl could center his own line, I think that would be a huge help to these Oilers in terms of kind of lengthening the lineup a little bit. But, the one thing that has helped is, I would say, Ryan McLeod now being elevated to the third hole, center hole. He's played pretty well. But to maybe have McLeod go down to the fourth spot or have him, jump up at times during games or play him on the wing or whatever, it just kind of lengthens the lineup a little bit if Draisaitl could play center and run his own line, especially against a deeper Colorado team than the Oilers have played, throughout the course of the first 2 rounds. But that's something we're going to have to monitor. But, at least, Draisaitl at whatever percentage he is, not 100, is able to bring something to the table. And he's brought quite a bit of offense, at least, throughout these playoffs. And he's been a huge help to these Oilers, given that he's not at full strength.
Yeah, and it's crazy. And I don't want to say, it's funny. I was talking with Matt Marchese about this on Tuesday. Sometimes goaltenders are like, we can't quite do it be at our best at 85%. For some reason, the best players, the best skaters, find a way to do it. And of course, Draisaitl picked up 2 points on Tuesday night. We mentioned McDavid with 3. Another goal for Evander Kane. And I remember, Daniel, when I talked to Jack Michaels on the show right before the playoffs, right before that series against LA, we were trying to, I was telling him, that was a very controversial move, to say the least, by Ken Holland to bring in Evander Kane. Given, the off-ice issues, what happened, the flameout down in San Jose, a lot of us were concerned that this was going to work. And he only became the 3rd best player on the team from the get-go. And it's only showing in the playoffs because he's only, leading the playoffs in goals right now, Daniel. That's what's so crazy about Evander Kane, is that he, as much as he missed in the NHL in the first part of this season, it seemed like he missed no beat whatsoever when he came to Edmonton.
Excuse me. Yeah, he's a good hockey player. There's no confusing that with some of those off ice things that you talked about. I would say that when he's not had a long-term contract, to fall back on, he's kind of had this, playing for a new deal. That's when he shines. It's when teams kind of offer him, the 7x7 as San Jose does, and things seem to go sideways. But this was really, from strictly a hockey standpoint, this situation was the perfect one for Evander Kane. I mean, he's coming in, eating a new deal, and he's going to play, we always knew he was going to play with one of Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl, and he's played with both. He's had success with both. And now he's playing with both of them on the same line. Or he has predominantly in the Calgary series too. Or he did rather. 13 goals in I guess how many games have the Oilers played now? 12. So I mean that's I guess they're up to 13. So he's at a goal a game. Tremendous stretch. He's 6 off of tying the NHL playoff record in goals, and we're just at the start of the third round. So I mean some of that is he's obviously a very high shooting percentage, but he's also a good player who can shoot to score, and he's not afraid to to use his shot and to get to the front of the net where goals are scored. He was kind of a perfect fit for this team, not only because they needed another top 6 winger, but because he brought kind of this element and has brought this element of kind of grit, this power forward style of play that the Oilers were really lacking. Obviously have a ton of skill, but not too many guys that were willing to kind of get their nose dirty and go to the tough areas of the ice. And Vander Kane certainly does that. So perfect element for this team. I think they're going to be very much in tough to try to re-sign him, given the success, given the cap issues, and they need to re-sign some players as well. But he was always thought to be, an ad for this year, and he certainly come in and done the job that and then some that he was expected to do here.
Yeah, it's funny. If you looked at the end of the season, the regular season, the drop off between Draisaitl and McDavid, and you see, oh man, it's bad between. I think Zach Hyman was third in scoring, but you saw Evander Kane and his points per game. That was pretty close to what Draisaitl and McDavid were putting up during the regular season in his time. And of course, there's the other guys too, and we'll get to a couple others here before we let you go here today, Mr. Nugent-Bowman here from The Athletic here on World Hockey Report. In the chat, Mean Girl Hockey says 5-4 Oilers in triple overtime tonight. I'm sorry, I have to work in the morning, Mean Girl Hockey. Can we not have that be the case today? Daniel probably wants to go to bed sometime too as well. Sean Butcher, Daniel, I hope this is the last time you ever have to hear this question. But Sean Butcher says, I'm an Avs fan, but what did you think of that horrible call when they called it onside instead of offsides? Daniel, what is your take? I hope I'm the last person to ask you about this, at least until the series is over, until the season's over. But what do you think of the Cale Makar goal that has been explained to in 35,000 different ways in 20,000 languages? What do you think about what happened on Tuesday night?
Yeah, having a couple of days I've been asked about it a couple of times and formulate opinions and stuff. I did write about it after game 1, but the one thing that I keep coming back to is if one of the linesmen had called that offside in real time, I don't think it's hard to know this without injecting truth serum into players and coaches, but I don't think any Avalanche player or coach would have been upset. Right. To me. I saw former referee Dave Jackson, who I think it's ESPN, where he's the rules analyst and officials. Works to explain the calls to officials. He explained it, I thought, quite well. But you almost have to think of it as Cale Makar dumped the puck in, which he certainly did do. Was not his intention. It was a very bizarre play. I have a hard time believing the linesman thought that's what he was doing in real time. I think it was kind of a missed call, and then they saw that on the on review and thought that by the letter of the law it was a good goal, it should have counted, but in the spirit of the rule and the kind of the practicality of the rule, it was kind of a bizarre one that I would have had no problem seeing called back if you look at it. In real time, and at your first couple looks at replays, and you thought, why the heck did that goal count? And you really have to nitpick and kind of get your magnifying glass out to understand why that goal counted. So, but Oilers fans, I mean, to me, what I wrote about was how that goal kind of changed things, because not only did the goal count, the Oilers were penalized for delayed game. Colorado scores on that power play, and the Oilers never got the game back to even. And the Oilers, they're playing a Colorado team that is, I think, better than them. They show the regular season that they're one of the best teams in the league. the Oilers are going to need all the help they can get, and for a call like that to go against them is going to put them in tough in this series. Now, having said that, I thought the Oilers were the beneficiaries of a pretty fortunate call at the end of Game 5 of the Calgary series. Like I thought that Blake Coleman goal, was called a goal on the ice. Didn't really see much that was conclusive in terms of him kicking that puck in. The Oilers were the better team, I think, overall in that series. They won in 5 games, but there's less than 6 minutes left. If that goal counts, Calgary, is up. Probably wins that game, not a certainty. But, if they're all of a sudden it's a 3-2 series, stranger things have happened, and it's no guarantee that Oilers win that series. So the Oilers are lucky that call worked in their favor at a much more critical time in a series. So I guess we'll call it even now. And, I thought both calls should have been reversed in their, in terms of the Oilers' favor, but I think the Oilers were the beneficiaries of the much more important call in the Calgary series.
Yeah. All I can tell you is this: you couldn't pay me enough money to work in the Situation Room in Toronto. Like I could not be left with that kind of responsibility. But hopefully, knock on wood, fingers crossed, we don't have any more of those controversial ones. I know Buffalo Sabres fans are still screaming about something that happened, 20 some odd years ago. But we don't need to go into that. You wrote an article recently, Jay, or not Jay, but I was going into Jay. One of our comments, Daniel Nugent-Bowman here. You wrote talking about Drew Holloway. I don't know how I got Jay out of that, but Drew Holloway and why he should play in this series against Colorado. And I remember my first experience watching Drew Holloway, Daniel, was the fact that he was a great player at Wisconsin when he first burst on the scene, and then they had the whole thing with the World Junior Championships and whatnot, him leaving so early, and Tony Granato crying about it. But why do you, and don't spoil the article, because everyone should subscribe to The Athletic anyways. I do. I love it. But why do you think, in layman's terms, why Dylan Holloway should be playing in this series against the Colorado Avalanche, this deep, especially into the Stanley Cup playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, they could have gotten him into the lineup earlier in the playoffs as well. But I think with Dylan Holloway, he would bring something to the bottom 6 that the Oilers are lacking, especially at the fourth line. I'm not necessarily suggesting that they would play him on the fourth line or should play him on the fourth line. But, you got a couple of guys, namely Josh Archibald, but I would say Zach Cassidy maybe could fall into this under this distinction as well, that are pretty that aren't fleet of foot, we'll put it that way. Also, have had trouble, with the goals against situation. That fourth line is been, like, they did get a goal in Game 1, but they also allowed one. And I'm talking about at 5-on-5, and they're 6-1 in the playoffs. In that distinction, I think, the Oilers are a fast team, and they have been able to kind of impose their speed on the Kings and the Flames in the first 2 series. But Colorado can certainly match them from a speed standpoint, and Dylan Holloway could bring a little bit of that. He could bring some forechecking element that's probably missing out of the bottom 6. I do understand why the team is reticent to play him. This is a guy that missed the first half of the year with that injury from the Wisconsin days that lingered, and then he had to have another surgery in September. And then he was tracking toward getting a call up late in the year, and he got injured again, a different injury, like a knee thigh injury that cost him most of April. So, to put him, a 20-year-old rookie, into a third round of the playoffs, I totally get why the Oilers are hesitant to do that. I know they're hesitant to do that. Obviously, they haven't played him yet, but I think he's their best option. And against the Colorado team that can match them and maybe even better than in the speed department, I think they need a little help in the bottom 6. And Dylan Holloway, I think, is the best option that they have available to them. And this is, I know they don't want to throw him to the Wolves, but this is, these are the Stanley Cup playoffs, and you got to play, I think, the best lineup that you can. And I think Dylan Holloway would provide that over some other options in the bottom, toward the bottom end of the bottom 6.
Yeah, no question. Because you knew, and sometimes, it's those unknown guys, the rookies that come up and play big. Sometimes Cale Makar had a decent first couple round or so when he first came up from UMass, and maybe that could be the guy. It could have been Holloway, but we'll wait and see. Obviously, I'm sure the Oilers want to go another round after this, so who knows what'll happen. And this is how we'll end here, Daniel, today with you here on World Hockey Report before we let you go here. How long do you think this series goes, and how do you think it plays out? Because we mentioned it's probably unlikely we're going to see 14 goals a game. Let's be honest. It's possible, but unlikely. But it just seems like this could be a very tight series where it could go very back and forth, similar to what we saw a little bit in the Los Angeles series in round 1. Does this series go the distance in 7, or is it like me where I say it might end in 6?
I think tonight's result is going to play a really important factor for the Oilers. I don't necessarily subscribe to the theory that a series hasn't started until you lose a game at home on home ice. I think the Avalanche are very deep. I think they're obviously a great team. I don't think they have matchup issues where they're going to have trouble winning a game on the road. I think the Oilers need to even this series tonight. After game 1, or especially the first half of game 1, I thought they were going to get run out of the building. And I'll give the Oilers credit for coming back. I think the Avalanche probably took their foot off the gas a little bit. But, the Oilers did come back. They're now, as we talked about at the very top of the show, they're playing a backup goaltender. It's hard to know. Like I thought they would get crushed by Calgary after the first game. They won 4 straight. So the Oilers have been a very, very resilient team under Jay Woodcroft. They've, even within, series being down 3-2 against the Kings, being down 1-0, won both series, all 3 now. But as I mentioned, that the goal that Mike Smith allowed in game 4, I thought of the Calgary series, I thought they were definitely going to lose that game, and they rebounded in a way that was atypical from past Oilers teams. So I give them a lot of credit. I don't think they're a team that's ever out of it until they fully are. But I think tonight's game is going to play a huge factor in the series. If the Oilers can win, I think it's going to be a long series, a tight series. If not, I like the Avalanche to really take a stranglehold and maybe you can close it out as quickly as 5 games. So tonight's decision, I think, is huge for Edmonton.
8 o'clock puck drop Eastern time, 6 o'clock local time there in Edmonton and Denver. We've been chatting up here with, from The Athletic and the Pro Hockey Writers Association, Daniel Nugent-Bowman. Daniel, thank you very much for taking the time today. Enjoy the game tonight. Be sure to jam out to some hip on the way out to the game. Get psyched up for it, because that's what I like to listen to on my way to games as well. Thank you very much for taking the time, and enjoy the rest of the playoffs, man.
For sure. Thanks for having me, Tyler. I appreciate it.
And we'll be back with more when we have Allan Kreda from the New York Times next here on World Hockey Report. Get ready to win with Billy's Smelling Salts. Billy's Smelling Salts are for gamers, athletes, and competitors alike who want to get in the zone. Us at World Hockey Report teamed up with Billy's, and if you use the promo code WHR when checking out, you'll save yourself some money. The highest quality smelling salts in the game and at the best price point if you use the promo code WHR on Billy's. Billy's Smelling Salts. Get ready to win.
Hockey fans, the pursuit for the Stanley Cup is on, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, has an unbelievable offer for the most exciting playoffs in sports. New customers can bet $5 on any team to win and get $100 in free bets no matter what, win or lose. Looking to turn a small bet into a big payday during playoffs? With DraftKings same-game parlays, you can do just that. Create your own parlay by combining multiple bets, like which team will win, how many goals will be scored, and more. It's your shot at an even bigger payout. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. Best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code THPN. Bet $5 on any NHL team to win and get $100 in free bets no matter what. That's code THPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
It's Stanley Cup playoff time in the NHL, and if you want to save some money on your next ticket purchase, sign up for SeatGeek and use promo code WHR when checking out. It's that simple on SeatGeek. When you use promo code WHR on your first purchase, you'll save $20.
Get ready to win with Billy's Smelling Salts. Billy's Smelling Salts are for gamers, athletes, and competitors alike who want to get in the zone. Us at World Hockey Report teamed up with Billy's, and if you use the promo code WHR when checking. And welcome back, everyone, here to World Hockey Report. Jeez, my comeback was so strong, my dog bumped her head on the chair. Wixie, are you okay? Did you hurt yourself? Oh. Yeah, Wixie's okay, everybody. Don't worry. Thank you all for joining me. Tyler Kuehl here, the Insider of the Insiders here on this Thursday. Thank you once again to Daniel. Don't call him Jay Nugent-Bowman. I apologize to him after we went to breaks. I felt bad. I was reading something on Jay Woodcroft. That's why Jay came into my head for some reason. But thank you very much to Daniel for jumping on here to talk about the Edmonton Oilers and Colorado Avalanche. Once again, Game 2 tonight. Now, we'll look back at Game 1 here between the Rangers and the Lightning here in just a second, guys. But I got to remind you, since the Stanley Cup playoffs are back, that means it's the WHR OT Challenge. That's right. We're back, presented by Player this year, P-L-Y-R, pronounced Player. So whenever a playoff game goes to overtime, you have to hop on Twitter, pick your goal scores for each team. Don't just pick one. Give yourself a chance to win both. Use the hashtag WHROT Challenge to be entered to win an awesome World Hockey Report prize pack from Player. Hammer down on hashtag WHROT Challenge to win. Now, to talk about the game last night, which, let's be honest, the way we talked about it on Tuesday and the way Janner and company talked about it yesterday, it was not quite exactly what we expected, at least the amount of goal scoring, because we thought the two best goaltenders in the league right now going head-to-head, it's going to be 1-0. Well, not quite. So with that, I need someone else to help me explain and describe what happened last night. He is a writer for the New York Times, as well as the Associated Press, covering all of New York hockey, not just the Rangers, but the Devils and the Islanders and more. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program today. None other than the one and the only. It is Allan Kreda. Allan, how you doing today, sir?
Great. New York City has hockey in June for only the third time in Manhattan in Rangers franchise history. The other two were 1994 when they won the Stanley Cup and 2014 when they reached the finals against the Los Angeles Kings. So this is rarefied air for everyone. There's a magic feeling in Manhattan and the city when the Rangers do what they're doing, and it's evident everywhere. And people are talking hockey on every street corner, literally. So it's very neat. It's fun. It brings the city together. It brings people together. It's good stuff.
How much is Mike Francesa talking about it? That's the real question we got to be asking ourselves.
It pops in. It does pervade the conversation because even baseball, it's early. Yankees and Mets are having wonderful starts. That's great. The Knicks disappeared without playoffs. The Nets first round out. Football is too early, of course, for all that. So the Rangers have center stage. The Islanders had it last year, the year before that. So they do also command attention. But the Rangers, it's a different dynamic because they're in Manhattan, because they're in so-called the Broadway blue shirts. That is a special, magical feeling when they're winning this late. Then people start thinking about Stanley Cup parades. So it's early, obviously, but it's out there.
And that's what's crazy too, because, you know, Madison Square Garden is always typically a loud building. Not just because the passionate fans there and on Broadway and whatnot, but also just for me, I'm an acoustics guy. I grew up in music. My family's all in music. My wife is as well. Like, I see that building, I could tell why it can be pretty loud in there and intimidating. But for some reason, when playoff time hits, like, the fans they get it, and it just becomes a rather hostile barn. I mean, this is a
Very.
pretty impressive. Was it now 7 straight wins now, Allan, for this team on home ice in the playoffs after the win last night? MSG's, I'm not going to go say madhouse. Like, there's some very intimidating buildings of the past, the old Boston Garden, the old Chicago stadiums and what have you. But it just seems like it's hard to play at MSG when you get into spring and the summer months.
No question about it. I mean, the visiting teams will always talk about coming in to play the Rangers there. Players look forward to visiting New York, the Garden. It's history. It's been around. That particular building has been there since 1968. So it's the oldest going. And the magic, the history, the imagery, there's sort of this larger than life feeling. And when it gets loud, it's loud. And it has to be a factor on the ice. Coach Cooper of the Tampa Bay Lightning said he feels like the crowd itself feels it's louder than the players feel. And that may be true because only the players know how it sounds on the ice. But it reverberates with noise. Last night, they scored a minute 11 in. It was like the game was over in a way because the crowd was so into it. It was exactly the opposite of what happened to the Carolina Hurricanes in Game 7 when the Rangers scored early there. It took the crowd out of it. It's a factor, and I think it's even more pronounced in this era because people are so eager to be together, be gathered, celebrating sports, celebrating the social dynamic of winning and celebrating. It's real in a multiplied way. And it's resonating with people. They're so happy to just be together and doing this after a couple of years of nothingness with the pandemic. So it's taken on a greater significance. And of course, generationally, for the younger fans to have a chance to be part of a run like this, unexpected. No one expected the Rangers to be one game up in the conference finals the way they finished a season ago. So this is all bonus time. And that place is loud as you ever hear it. It's not the same in the regular season. Of course, it never is because those fans that were sort of at every game 30 years ago and at every ticket for every game, they're not really there anymore. It's a more corporate setting, sure. But now the diehards are spending whatever, and people are coming if they're one playoff game and the towels are waving. And it's a must see, must have to be place. And that's why, and they're winning. Right. Only that triple overtime loss in Game 1 to Pittsburgh, which of course could have won equally, is their only loss. That happened at near midnight. It was a surreal Twilight Zone finish, and they've been on this run ever since. And it seems like they'll never lose again the way they're playing at home.
Oh yeah, they're finding the right niche. And last night's game, you look at it. This is the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champions coming in. And I do say 9 days of rest. I have to accentuate that enough because, coming as a former player myself, Allan, you've seen the game, how the game's played. If you're off for that long, even if you are the best team in the league, you're going to have a little bit of rust. But Chris Kreider scores first, his 9th of the playoffs. Mika Zibanejad gets his 8th. But I really want to focus on, and Richard Farley, you're jumping in the chat here, and we see you. I'll get to it here in a second. But Philip Hedl and the kid line, we knew Philip Hedl had potential. We knew Alexi Lafreniere had potential. We knew Capo Caco had potential. But all of a sudden, Philip Hedl in the last couple rounds has really brought himself to meet those expectations that we saw when he was brought into the fold in the first place. 5 goals in the last 3 games, now 7 in the playoffs, Allan. This kid and this line that he's on has really paid off for this hockey club that, like we said, might not have been expecting to get this far, but they're contributing to why the Rangers are at this point.
It's like a magic chord was struck on someone's keyboard somewhere, and boom, Philip Hedl looks like he's been doing this for 5, 6, 7 years. He's only 22. Yeah. He is somehow the 3rd most senior Rangers skater, somehow behind Chris Kreider and Mika Zibanejad, and he's playing like a left-handed Mika Zibanejad in these last few games. And there was an excellent point raised just last night. Coach Gerard Gallant said there was one game they sat Hedl late in the season, have him watch. That's usually a good strategy for a young player to have a breather, not think so much. And he said, all I want you to do is play a little like Mika. You're not Mika, but you can play a little like him. Watch him, what he does. Mika's floating around. He's getting these shots at the big, heavy shot. He's setting up on the power play. And Hedl's he's doing that. He did it last night twice. He scored fabulous goals on the off wing with his lefty shot. That's a weapon they haven't had. That third line was their best line. And he's the senior member of it at 22. Alexi Lafreniere just 20. lighting it up with assists. Kako is contributing. He hasn't even scored yet in a major way, but he's right there. I mean, they look like a unit that can be a centerpiece for the next decade. And of course, the Rangers are very lucky to win the lottery twice, second round in 19 with Capo, first overall pick with Lafreniere in 2020. So that was some jackpot stuff there. But this is super bonus. In addition to their weapons on the top two lines, Panarin with Kopp and Ryan Strome, and of course, Kreider, Zibanejad, and Frank Vetrano, another late addition that's paid huge dividends. The Rangers they're just loaded up front the way they're playing, and they're playing with confidence, no fear. They know they can rally back when they have to, and they take a lead, and they're unbeatable. But Heedle's ascension, more than validating him being the 21st overall pick in 2017, 14 picks after the Rangers picked Lias Andersson, who never worked out, traded to Los Angeles, 7th overall, did not work out. So the randomness of the draft. But Philip Heedle came to the Rangers. He was just 17 when he was drafted. He played 9 games that first year under Alain Vigneault. He developed the last few years under David Quinn, but now he's hit a new stride. Gerard Gallant, just letting the young guys play, not browbeating anyone, just go play, and mistakes are not going to be harped on. And you can see how that's working. And the veterans, I'm sure, have taken these guys under their wings, and it just pays off into these pressure games that can only help them in the years to come.
And Gerard Gallant, we know that he's always been willing to play the younger kids because, I mean, you go back to his days coaching in the Quebec League with St. John's and, helping that team, leading that team to a Memorial Cup and coaching Huberdeau and the young kids when they were down in Florida. And obviously the band of misfits in his first season in Vegas with the Golden Knights. Richard Farley asked this interesting question. And, with I'm going to quote him here. With high expectations comes great pressure, just ask Toronto and Florida. Rangers are playing with pressure-free house money. That's what he says. Allan, what do you respond to that? Because, we knew this team was making strides over the last couple of years, ever since the alleged rebuild or whatever the heck Jeff Gordon and Glenn Sather were trying to tell everyone. It seems like that never was the case, but it seems like this team was heading that in the right direction. But what do you respond to Farley's comment here about playing with somewhat free house money here?
I agree with it. Essentially, I felt it immediately when they beat Pittsburgh in Game 7 overtime at the Garden, coming back from 3-1. They looked finished in all the games after they were down 3-1. They were down behind Pittsburgh by 2 goals twice. They rallied back. They were behind in Game 7 a goal, rallied back, tie it, win in overtime. So just winning that series put them in that echelon of this is bonus time. Playing Carolina, first place team. They have home ice. They're unbeatable at home. I didn't really think they'd overcome them. They trailed them 2-0. They trailed them 3-2. You felt like, okay, they're hitting the wall, and they still resiliently come back again and win that series in 7. So the house money factor, I think, almost since Game 5 of the Pittsburgh series when they overcame a 2-0 deficit and beat Pittsburgh at home, they looked completely done in that home game. They looked completely done in Game 6. Down 2 goals. You think the Pittsburgh crowd would rally the home team. It didn't happen. The hand of God, or the unseen hand that Mike Emmerich talked about, late goal in Game 6 in Pittsburgh, and then Panarin's overtime Game 7 winner. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard the Garden that loud. It's either going to be deathly silent or electrically loud. And here we are now. It reminds me of some of these runs the Rangers have had in the past where you just feel like it's all bonus time. Anything can happen. You win again, you're up 2 with a chance. You start dreaming of the finals, the fan base. I mean, it's very early, but house money all the way through, and the experience. This is that true experience. When they talk about, okay, a team ends a subpar season with a few good games, and they talk about carrying into the next season, never happens. Like what you do in April does not resonate in October, but what you do in May and June does.
Yeah.
And these players that have excelled, the kid line, Shesterkin winning 2 Game 7s. I mean, this is what carries you through a career. This is the groundswell of experience that makes a difference in the years to come. So it's worth its weight in futures. And the Rangers are young, still young. We haven't even talked about Braden Schneider and Keandre Miller, super strides on the blue line. I mean, this is also out of nowhere. Braden Schneider, rookie. He looks like he's been there 6 years. He's impersonating Dan Girardi back there, blocking shots, doing it all quietly. And yet, I mean, this guy has not missed a game. He's an ace. Keandre Miller, superb strides, playing with size and speed, scoring goals, big hits. I mean, tremendous. So not enough can be said about all these young players ascending to levels I don't think they even dreamed of a couple of months ago.
Yeah, I've loved Keandre Miller ever since he came to the pro ranks, because he's a big kid, big size, good speed. Richard Farley asks if I've ever been to the Garden. No, Richard, I've not been to the Garden yet. I have been to the state of New York. I have been to Buffalo, actually. I went to KeyBank Center this past November. There's a long story with that, but unfortunately, I've not been able to make my way to MSG. It's on the bucket list. Don't you worry. But I'm surprised it's gone this long, Alan. And we were, you called me earlier today when we were setting this up, and we started talking about the goaltending. Igor Shesterkin. I mean, I don't know how the New York Rangers have done this thing, okay? I'll be honest with you, I couldn't remember exactly off the top of my head who the goaltender was in the early 80s after John Davidson. But after that, there was John Van Beesbroek for a few years, and then went Mike Richter, and then there was that weird year with Mike Dunham, and then now we're here with Henrik Lundqvist and then Igor Shesterkin. The New York Rangers, and I almost forgot, there was a guy named Eddie Jacquemin way back in the day, too. He was a pretty darn good Hall of Fame goaltender. I don't know what it is, but the fact that it took the Rangers 54 years to win a Stanley Cup with the goaltending they had and the goaltending they still have, like, it's an incredible, I don't want to use the word dynasty here because we are talking about a series against the Tampa Bay Lightning here, which we'll talk about later show with Adam Brownstein coming up here in hour 2. But the Rangers always seemingly have a good number one goaltender back there. How does this happen, Alan?
Some luck, some just rising to the occasion of playing in New York. I mean, in 1981, which was an earlier memory for me, they had a guy named Steve Baker who came out of nowhere, and the Rangers upset the Los Angeles Kings and St. Louis Blues, top 2 and 3 seeds in a year when they played 1 against 16, 2 against 15.
Yeah.
They had a run until they ran into the Buzzsaw Islanders in the semifinals and were swept. But that was another dream run, a goalie just carrying them. JD was too injured to play a significant role back then. So it's happened before. John Van Beesbroek in 86 carried them to the semifinals. Of course, Mike Richter is magic, the Stanley Cup. Eddie Jacquemin to the finals in 1972. And, I talked to Henrik Lundqvist once about if you had been with that 72 Ranger team, if you had been the goalie as great as Eddie Jacquemin was, Henrik Lundqvist surely would have maybe gotten the Rangers over the hump. So they've had these.
Well, do you know? It's a great trivia question, Alan. I'd love to ask. Who was the goaltender that started Game 6 in the 72 final?
Game 6, Gilles Villemure.
Yep,
started for the Rangers with his mask that looked like his face. He had one of the greatest masks of all time. Right, that's how they were 1 and 1A in those years. As Eddie was number 1, but Gilles Villemure was right behind. They co-won the Vezina Trophy one year.
Yeah. But that's what I always find so funny. Like Eddie Jacquemin this career year, but I'm like, I always remember, like, wait a second, Bobby Orr scored the game-winning goal against the other guy. Like but that's how the playoffs work. I mean, and of course, you got to look at the guy behind the bench that'd be willing to do that sort of thing. A former goaltender, the late Emil Francis.
Right.
But jumping back here before we go too far into the the old goaltenders of the New York Rangers, because we could probably do that all day, Alan. Let's be honest with you here. But Igor Shesterkin, this series was, the best up-and-coming Russian goaltender against the current best Russian. No, excuse me, screw Russian. Best goaltender in the NHL. Like, we can't even specify where he's from. Andrei Vasilevsky certainly has. If he put a 981 up in the second round, he's a pretty good goaltender. But Shesterkin is just as good. And to make things even better, he showed up even more so last night. I don't want to put it all on Vasilevsky. There were some defensive breakdowns in front of him in the Tampa defense. But certainly Igor Shesterkin, knowing that who he was going up against on the other end, certainly was the star of the show with 37 saves last night.
It was wild. I don't think anyone there predicted such a finish, 6-2, 6 goals against. No one saw that coming. Of course, Tampa Bay hadn't played in 9 days. That's a factor. But Vasilevsky wasn't quite himself. He was beaten high. He was beaten low. I don't know. Strange doings. I would not expect a repeat of that in Game 2 or any other game, but there was some other force at work. And of course, this has to be huge news back in Russia. 2 elite goaltenders from the home nation against each other. They're not that far off in age, only a couple of years apart, just that Vasilevsky's been in the NHL longer. And of course, he's won 2 Stanley Cups. So unexplainable, really. Shocking 6 goals. He only allowed 3 in the entire sweep of the Florida Panthers last round. So,
right. And he scored 3 in 1 period.
Right. Unbelievable. Right. We were saying that as the game evolved, he's got 3, he's got 4. I mean, the Rangers are doing what Florida couldn't do at all with their weaponry. How do you explain it? You can't. And it wasn't like the Lightning played a terrible game. They just were victimized by a harder working Ranger team who had better opportunities and cashed them in. Power play was good, and they just found ways to beat the great Vasilevsky. And Shesterkin played his usual shutdown game. It was 2-2, and he gave the Lightning nothing. And I mean, they have to be thinking about it. They know he's equally elite. I mean, he's going to win the Vezina Trophy almost
100%. Yeah,
it's astonishing. I mean, no one knew, again, how would he be in the playoffs? Would he be able to lift his game to the cauldron of what the Garden and what these other not friendly visiting arenas are? And he had a couple of subpar games against the Penguins. Obviously, some blowouts happens, just like it happened for Vasilevsky last night. But he's just he turns the page right away into eliteness all over again. I'm sure teams think about it when they're down a goal, like, how are we going to beat this guy? Because he doesn't make mistakes. He rarely lets in bad goals. He's just shut down, and the defense in front of him protecting him and playing for him. I mean, he's not only that, he's a weapon on offense. He got 2 assists he had in a game last week. So he's doing it all. He's going to score one of these days.
No kidding. I mean,
he does it in a playoff game. The ceiling might lift off the Garden altogether.
Oh man, I mean, Richard Farley jumped back in the chat saying, "Remember when analysts said that they were overpaying for Shesterkin with $5.6 million per season?" But listen, I'll be honest with you, Alan. We knew he was a great goaltender, and even if say somehow the season actually stopped at the end of 82 games, I would have still said Shesterkin was the Vezina Trophy winner. But the question was could he do it in the playoffs? And it's a different animal. I mean, Henrik Lundqvist was able to rise to the occasion for a couple of years, but we saw 2012 against New Jersey and, got outdone by Jonathan Quick in 2014. And then you can go, into the 08 playoffs against, was it 08 or 09 game 7 against Washington?
09.
That's right. The Sergei Fedorov goal. That's when I always try to, the goal I remember, I always forget which year it was, but the fact that he's able to rise to the occasion and play so well. And yes, you're right. It was the third stringer against Pittsburgh. It was the backup against Carolina. Doesn't matter. He still faced 2 pretty good offenses and had to come up big. And if the Rangers want to do it, if the Rangers want to be on like what Cody Janzen's trying to put some poison in, saying Bolts in 5, if he wants to do it against the Lightning, if the Rangers want to get past the Lightning, Igor Shesterkin has to be as good as he was last night, as good as he was in Game 7, and the Game 7 before that, if the Rangers want to make it to the Cup Finals for the first time in 8 years.
No question. And again, Henrik, who's now become a TV star on MSG Networks in New York and analyzes every game as well as he played goal. He's a natural. There was a conference call Zoom with him and Steve Alakett before the playoffs started. And I asked Henrik, how do you feel about that whole concept of experience in the playoffs? Do you have to sort of learn it? Do you have to go through a season of maybe travails and struggle? And he said, yes and no. I mean, you start winning and experience becomes experience. There's no rule book. I didn't have the best first year. The Rangers in 2006, Henrik's rookie year, was swept by the Devils. Happens. They were a very young team that year too, but they had Jaromir Jagr, who was injured. They didn't get a break when they needed it. Henrik came back the next year, won the first time the Rangers had won a playoff series in more than a decade. Did it again in 08, kept doing it every year, carried them 6-1 in Game 7s. I mean, all he did is win big games in the playoffs. So the experience for young Shesterkin happened immediately. But even it could have gone the other way. They were down 3-1 to Pittsburgh. If they had lost Game 5, everyone said, okay, they had their moment. We'll get better next year. And the Rangers hadn't rallied to win 5 or 6 against Pittsburgh. That's exactly what everyone would be saying. Now it's just hit a different echelon because he's repeating it and confidence grows, momentum grows. You've beaten 2 really good teams. You're in a place you haven't been before. And there's that house money theme again. All you have to do is keep doing it. And confidence begets confidence. So why not? Why not hockey in June was what I was thinking last night. Why not?
Why not hockey in June? Why not carry as close as you can to July this year? Because this I don't see this series going short. I see this series being a long one. Who wins? I'll be honest with you. I mean, we keep saying, "Oh, this is it. Tampa's falling on their back." And we put out the question of the day today, Alan, before the show. We said, is Tampa done? Have they hit the wall, or is it just rust? And the majority of people said rust. But before we let you go here, Alan, how long do you think this series goes? Is there a sweep, or does it go 5? Does Tampa rally back, or do we go 7 games again and have a nice little bit of heart monitors and AEDs being passed around the building at MSG for another Game 7?
Excellent question. I cannot believe Tampa will just go away. They are the champions. They're in position to do something no team has done since the early 80s Islanders when they won 4 in a row. They're on the brink of a chance to get to the round to do that. They're not letting it go so quickly. They may have been a bit rusty, a bit at a sink, but they're not giving up 6 goals every game. No. They have so much weaponry. I'd be shocked if it doesn't go at least 6, 7. I think no one wants to do another 7. It's too much. And I also think at some point the Rangers will field the 2 7s they already played. They can't, they're only human. They can't keep doing that, going back to that well. It's going to go longer than 4 and shorter than 7. I think it really comes down to what happens in Game 2, because if the Rangers can win again at home, Tampa then faces that, for any team, difficult task of winning 4 of the next 5. And that doesn't matter who you are, where you're at. That's a hard dynamic. That's a tough dynamic. And the Rangers know they have the home advantage, which is amazing in and of itself that they earn that with a few more regulation wins than the Lightning. They have that. So they have that Game 7 if they need it. They know they have the home crowd at least 2 or 3 more times, and they can withstand whatever goes on in Tampa on the other side. But if the Rangers win tomorrow, they're in the driver's seat, obviously. If Tampa comes back and does what's expected and plays their game and finds a way to tie it, then they're in the driver's seat. They got that proverbial split on the road. So sweep, I'd be more shocked than anything I've ever seen in my hockey watching career. But I don't discount the champions playing like champions. They won 10 series in a row. There are 4 wins from getting to the Cup Finals and dreaming of a 3rd straight. That's so hard to do, bubble or not, pandemic series or not. They're there. They won double-digit series in a row. That rarely happens. Pittsburgh couldn't do it when they won the 2 cups 6-7 years ago. So this is a territory they are not going to let go of easily. When the Islanders won their cups, and I've talked to those players many times, they said it was our cup. Teams had to come take it from us. Guys would lay down everything they had and more. Bob Nystrom, Clark Gillies, Dennis Potvin. They played until they had nothing left, and they came within a whisker of winning 5 in a row. So
I know
this is not going to be easy.
Not at all, indeed. But thankfully, Alan, your job's easy. You get to cover awesome hockey all the time for the New York Times and Associated Press. We've been chatting up, like you guys said, with Allan Kreda. Be sure to follow him at A. Kreda. If you don't know how to spell it, it's literally in the little lineup thing we have here on World Hockey Report. Alan, thanks so much for taking the time.
Welcome.
Unfortunately, we could probably go for 3 hours. We'll talk about Eddie Jacquemin and trying to check other people and throw sticks at guys and talk about all the great stuff for Rangers history. But
last tiny item. The Rangers are wearing this number 7 patch for the great Roger Gilbert is a factor. If you believe in guardian angels and higher spirits, number 7, Mr. Ranger, who passed last summer at 80, was ubiquitous at the games. He was such a force for the alumni. He knew all the players. He was cheering for the Rangers as a fan. He was an ambassador, and he's a factor. They're winning. There's something going on with 7s. They won 2 game 7s for number 7. He's on their shoulders. I've spoken to his wife and family about this, and it's not unnoticed. It's happening. So if you believe in higher spirits, number 7 is helping the Rangers in spiritual ways.
100%. You say guardian angel. I say garden angel. Rod Gilbert, the great number 7.
That's good.
Alan, we'll definitely talk to you down the line. And guys, be sure to stay tuned, though. When we come back from this break, we're going to have From the Morning Skate. It'll be Brownie himself here on World Hockey Report.
Zingo.
Get ready to win with Billy's Smelling Salts. Billy's Smelling Salts are for gamers, athletes, and competitors alike who want to get in the zone. Us at World Hockey Report teamed up with Billy's, and if you use the promo code WHR when checking out, you'll save yourself some money. The highest quality smelling salts in the game and at the best price point if you use the promo code WHR on Billy's. Billy's Smelling Salts. Get ready to win.
Hockey fans, the pursuit for the Stanley Cup is on, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, has an unbelievable offer for the most exciting playoffs in sports. New customers can bet $5 on any team to win and get $100 in free bets no matter what, win or lose. Looking to turn a small bet into a big payday during playoffs? With DraftKings same-game parlays, you can do just that. Create your own parlay by combining multiple bets like which team will win, how many goals will be scored, and more. It's your shot at an even bigger payout. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. Best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code THPN. Bet $5 on any NHL team to win and get $100 in free bets no matter what. That's code THPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
It's Stanley Cup playoff time in the NHL, and if you want to save some money on your next ticket purchase, sign up for SeatGeek and use promo code WHR when checking out. It's that simple on SeatGeek. When you use promo code WHR on your first purchase, you'll save $20.
And welcome back, everyone, here to World Hockey Report on this Thursday, June the 2nd. Yes, I had to look at the day. The days are kind of blending together. I do apologize. Richard Farley jumped in the chat there before the break and saying that this is the experience for Rangers fans alone is priceless right now. That's awesome. This show is phenomenal. I wish it was on later in the day. Thank you very much, Richard. You know what, Richard? If you want to spend a couple bucks, I can do an 8-hour show. I can make it happen. We can get awesome guests for the entire day. It'll be awesome. We're going to be joined here by a second guest. Once again, thank you to Allan Kreda and Daniel Nugent-Bowman before that. I'll get to our final guest here today here in just a moment's time. But guys, do you need a new hockey stick? Guys or gals, you need a new hockey stick? All the big brands keep raising up their prices, inflation and all that crazy stuff, making the game more unaffordable than ever before. However, you don't need to fall for that. Pro Rock Hockey, it's right behind us for a good reason. The true Canadian company with real morals, offering players of all levels a top-of-the-line stick at a fraction of the cost. It's lighter, more balanced, and has more customizable options than anything off the rack. Check out the family-run business today at prorock.com. And with that, guys, we're going to talk about something that is, we'll talk about the Rangers game against the Lightning one more time. We'll talk about preview game 2 tomorrow night. We'll talk a little bit about the Avs and Oilers once again. Here, with a guy from the Morning Skate. Yes, that's right, the Morning Skate. Yes, we talked to Ked yesterday, but we had to double back. We had to run it back. We're joined now here by none other than Brownie himself. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. It's Adam Brownstein. Adam, how are we doing today, sir?
It'd be nice to give a more down the middle than the Homer Ranger take that I'm sure Ked gave. Was he chanting Rangers in 5 the whole time?
I don't know if he was chanting Rangers in 5, but he was certain. Well, I don't know how he was yesterday. He was probably getting excited yesterday. That's for sure.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure if we had him on today, he would be screaming Rangers in 3.
He still is probably doing push-ups in his yard.
but Ked's an awesome guy. Always fun guy. Join us in World Hockey Report. And Brownie, you as well. Thank you very much for taking the time. By the way, I just mentioned a Boston Bruins and Northeastern women's hockey blogger. And anyone that supports women's hockey is a friend of mine. Thank you very much, Brownie. You're an awesome dude.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad you got. I appreciate the invite.
Oh, of course, man. This series in particular, this Rangers Lightning series, we came into it thinking it's going to be 10 goals, and not in one game. I'm talking the entire series, because we have the two best goaltenders in the NHL going head-to-head right now. And we said it with Matt Marchese on Tuesday. We were talking about how this was Patrick Waugh, Marty Brodeur 0-1 finals-esque matchup. And then last night happened, and all of us went, well, we are all idiots, because I say this. I don't point that game last night at Andrei Vasilevsky. Yes, 6 goals. Yes, the Frank Vetrano goal. But, Brownie, look at all those grade A chances the Rangers had. Chances that Florida never had against Andrei Vasilevsky. At least not as many, it seemed like. It just seemed like Vasilevsky was under siege. And, I'm going to chalk that up to 9 days off. I mean, you're off for a week. I mean, football, you can sit for a week, no problem. Hockey, you really can't. Hockey, you need to be in that rhythm. And I think that's what we saw the Lightning try to get back into, just weren't able to last night.
Well, it's the whole rust versus rest argument, right?
Yeah.
But nothing knocks off the rust like letting a 6 spot. So they're going to get, listen, you've put me in an awkward position to try to defend Tampa, because I have made my stance clear is I hate that team with a passion. You could pick any of the remaining teams to win the cup and I'd be fine with it. If Tampa does, I'm going to be looking for a bridge to jump off of. You
can jump in the harbor when they win another Stanley Cup. There you go.
Yeah. But it's all just like little things. And they had a lot of defensive breakdowns. I feel, the normal slow back check from Kucherov led to that second goal, right? When he walked in, that was Kucherov's guy. But just little stuff that you still see the championship DNA. Me and Ked and I were talking, I think it was last night after the game, when Trouba knocked Jarvis into another dimension and he was crawling back on his hands and knees, and the Canes came on the ice and got the too many men penalty, which was a crucial play in Game 7.
Yeah.
So last night with the Rangers, McDonough jumped on. They all noticed him on. No one touched the puck, and he skirted back to the bench. And it's those kind of game situational awareness that you don't see in non-championship teams. And I think that's what's going to separate Tampa. And I picked Tampa to win in 7. I think it's going to go the distance. I think last night was an aberration for Vasilevsky and the team. And now they're like, whoa, we need to dial in. And I think Stamkos is too good of a leader to let that game carry over personally. And when they haven't lost 2 in a row since they got swept by Columbus, I believe.
Right. Yeah. And that's what makes it so crazy. Ked just jumped into the chat here. Rangers in 5. There you go, Brown.
Yeah,
He's getting
there
it
it is.
for you. If the Lightning blew it last night after playing 2 nights ago, we'd be hearing all about how they haven't gotten any rest. I guess there's a point there, but there was a stretch, Brownie, that the Lightning were right before they whipped up Toronto like 8-1 during the regular season. People were yelling that the Lightning were tired. They'd lost they lost like 4 out of 5 or something like that. They were having a poor stretch there in March, and people were like, see, it's over. They're going to get knocked out in the first round. And then they, beat Toronto in 7, and then they smacked around Florida, and all of a sudden everyone's back on the holy cow, the Lightning they can do this thing here. From the Rangers side, what do you do to combat that? What do you do to make sure that this doesn't happen? Because yes, a 6-2 win's awesome, and yes, MSG was bumping like crazy last night. But even, Gerard Gallant, Artemi Panarin, this is a veteran team. They know the guys on the other side. They know that they're going to come back tomorrow night for Game 2. What do the Rangers have to prepare for to make sure that, Tampa doesn't blow them out of the water like they did in Game 1?
I would think that New York's a very young team, and I would think the biggest thing is to kind of take that breath and calm down and not. I mean, the music's going to be going, the crowd's going to be going. There's going to be guys that are finished with warm-ups, ready to run through a wall, and you can't maintain that into the third period, late second period. I think there's going to be like a take a breath, and I think that's why it's so crucial that Barclay Goodrow is back.
Yeah,
I said that to Ked. He's been the difference maker in terms of his experience. I mean, he's playing 4 fly minutes, and he's still a pivotal part of their solution. The defense has to continue to keep the gaps close, and they have to keep the shooting lanes open for Shesterkin. I mean, it's pretty basic. And Tampa, you were talking about how they were kind of coasting in the regular season. They're one of those teams that figured it out. Would you rather hang a President's Trophy banner, or would you rather have a Stanley Cup banner? And that's what it boils down to.
Tell the Florida Panthers that. I mean, they're all excited. Yeah, we're gonna finally have a banner that doesn't say Eastern Conference Finals next to it or Eastern Conference Champions because they haven't had
that banner might be hanging in that gentleman's club where they were the night before.
Oh, listen, that's like as soon as I heard that, I texted a buddy of mine, a friend of the show, Peyton Turnage. He's a big Predators fan, and I texted him like, I'm getting some Radulov's Kostitsyn's vibes over here. of guys missing curfew or whatever, but. You know what? I told someone this at work. I work at a local radio station, and they weren't big hockey people. And I said that to him, like, what happened, and probably that's why Florida got maybe. I don't say got handled in Game 4, but I remember he's like, well, yeah, I mean, you're professionals. You should be able to party all night and play the next day. And I'm like, against the Lightning?
Yeah.
Like Detroit, sure. If you want to do that against the Blackhawks in the Stanley Cup playoffs against the defending champs, I mean. It's a hilarious story, and you're right. Had Florida won, as Greg Wyshynski said, it'd be the weirdest tradition since the beard.
Yeah. Well, Ken and I talked about it the other day, I think on the podcast. I'm not sure if it was offline. And his point was, you're down 3-0 against the two-time champs. Why not? And it goes back to like when the Red Sox beat the Yankees in 2004 with Kevin Millar, when he was like shots at Jack before they went out and played. They were like, why not? Don't let us win one, that kind of mentality. And maybe that's what they were doing. And I mean, who am I sitting here on a Zoom call talking about it? Who am I to say what's right or wrong to do in the NHL? Right. But it was not a good look when they lost.
Well, those guys, I mean, there's no state tax down there. They probably have an extra couple dollars to spend. So I guess if there's a place
they're stimulating the local economy, right?
Because that's where it all hits. Even though they're right down the road from Miami. Cody Janzen jumped in the chat saying the morning skate is the best. There you go.
Thanks, Cody.
Ted and Brownie here on World Hockey Report. Sean Butcher says, "Let's go Predators." Hey, thank you very much, Sean. He's down in Kentucky, is Sean. He told us how bad gas prices are down in his neck of the woods. He also says Igor. That's how that in regards to how the Rangers don't have a letdown in Game 2 tomorrow night, and it's going to be an interesting series, and I asked Allan this question right before we left him, and I'll ask you this one, Brownie, right here off the hop. How long do you think this series will go? Obviously, Ked wants 5.
Yeah,
Janner,
or 3.
I don't know if Janner's just trying to stir the pot here, but he says Bolt's in 5. I don't believe either of those guys. I picked 6 in this series. What do you think?
I originally picked 7, and I was waffling on which way because Ked got in my head with all his New York talk, and it's their, reason, just seeing them. I finally admitted to him, I'm like, well, maybe if Carolina beat the Bruins and then lost to the Rangers, maybe the Bruins really weren't as good as I had envisioned. And I think I had to take off my black and gold glasses to view, and I just think Tampa is the depth and the experience. I think one of the big X factors in this is, you saw a little bit of it last night, is Corey Perry parked in the blue paint messing with Igor. And if that continues, they're going to draw New York into all that nonsense, Maroon and Reeves, and you really don't want to be on the penalty kill against Tampa.
No.
So I think if New York's going to win this, they got to, like the stuff we talked about before, keeping the lanes clear, closing gaps, letting Igor see everything, and then you got to stay out of the box. It's like basic hockey 101, but they're just another level on that power play.
Well, look at the weapons. It's funny, like Kucherov's been producing, but it doesn't seem like the same Kucherovs we saw last year and even in 2020. But Stamkos is there, and you have Ross Colton, who is playing great, and you have Andre Palat, who's still chiming in. Oh, by the way, there's still like Victor Hedman back on the blue line, so yeah, that's still a thing. But to your point, it's one of those things where if you're playing with confidence, it's awesome, because it looked like, and it's probably gonna make a lot of Florida people mad, it seemed like after Game 2, there was a minimal amount of confidence with the Florida Panthers. And what the Rangers showed last night, and maybe it was because they were still a little bit on that high from winning Game 7 and perks of, having home ice advantage, or no, not home ice advantage, of having a quick travel up the coast, is that you play the 2 nights later, so you don't have time to think. You don't have time to worry about, we're playing against a 2-time Stanley Cup champs. It's all right, it's go time. They showed that they can be a confident team. They showed that in game, and especially in Game 7. We talked about it on Tuesday, how they showed that, Carolina hasn't lost at home. PNC Arena's loud. Raleigh people are rallying Raleigh crazy. They didn't care. And they showed last night they didn't care that they were going up against Tampa. If they can keep that up, Brownie, this
What's the
could be a
no
long
quit,
series,
right?
but also the Rangers can't be counted out at any stretch.
No, I mean, you have the best goalie, arguably the best goalie on the planet in net, who is up for MVP as well. They have a deep, young, talented defense core, and they're getting secondary scoring, and they have a fourth line. I mean, they have Godzilla on the bench, makes everybody play big anytime 75 comes over the boards, and that translates across. I think that translates across. I hate to sound like a dinosaur, but in the playoffs, you need a Godzilla, and everyone is a little bigger. I mean, that's why I love Corey Perry. He's not that same kind of player, but just all that little stuff that he does that just drives you insane over the course of a series. But I honestly think either team can do it. I think last night was an aberration. I think most of these games are going to be 3-2, 2-1. That would be my opinion going forward. But again, it's been long established on the morning skate that I'm awful gambler. So this is why I don't bet, because I'm never right.
I still remember one time vividly. This is why I always tell people, like, I had a couple buddies of mine that, they were watching like sport. We like to watch like baseball or college basketball. I was like, oh, I got money on this team. And I'm like, you probably shouldn't have picked them. And it's like, and I give them like some bogus, like, especially basketball. Like, I'm not always right, but for some reason I tell people, like, you should consult me before betting, because especially like hockey is the worst sport to bet on. Hockey is where any given night the Arizona Coyotes can shut out the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like, it's that kind of sport. And I remember one time I was broadcasting a game. This is how fun the ACHA is, Brownie. You probably know this as well. One of the rink workers who I had known, who used to play with me at Davenport, walked up to me with his phone, showing me who should I bet on tonight. And it was like a couple years ago. It was Edmonton versus Montreal. And I looked at it. I looked at it for about 5 seconds, and I said Montreal. And it's like, why not Edmonton? They're the better team. And I'm like, trust me, Montreal. I was right, of course, because hockey is dumb. You can have Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, whatever. I think Cam Talbot was still there with Edmonton. But hey, Montreal can win on any given night, even in that the 2019 last place Montreal Canadiens. Like, it's possible. So that's why I never bet for the playoffs, because listen, who all thought? I mean, if you told me at the beginning of the season that the New York Islanders, Brownie, were not going to make the playoffs, I probably would have not put money on that, because I thought they were going to win the division. That's how dumb I was back then. But yeah, hockey's a fun sport, not a fun one to bet on though.
I wanted Carolina as a Bruins fan. That's who I wanted. I wanted to face Ranta, the ghost of Antti Ranta, right? That's what I wanted to happen, when Freddie was hurt, and look where it got us, the Bruins, not us, not me, but them. Yeah. But it's the joke always I had with my buddies is that betting on hockey is for degenerates. And now I'm involved in hockey a lot more, and I'm like,
DGen from up the country.
I should walk that back a little bit, right? But it's tough. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's crazy because you mentioned the series, and I remember I was talking with my buddy Nathan Strauss. We had him on the show as well, and he's a UMass grad and UMass broadcaster and Bruins fan, of course. And I asked him, and I was like, I'll be honest with you, I'm a Leafs fan. I went through all those series.
Oh, yeah.
So, yes, and you're right. The only time I ever cheered for Brad Marchand was when he was wearing a Canadian Leaf once in a couple of tournaments. So that's the only time I've ever looked at 63 that way. But, you know how much people don't like Tony DeAngelo when I'm agreeing with Jack Edwards and Brad Marchand during a series, because that was one thing that was so crazy in that series. And I'm like, if there's a time for Boston for me to say, hey, Boston, you go ahead and win, it was that series. And if they just could win one of those on the road, we may be talking about a Boston-Tampa conference final. Yeah,
as much as I would take his off-ice antics out of the equation, right, Tony DeAngelo, you can't deny the guy's talent and his ability. And the way he drags and walks that blue line. I mean, I think his offensive game is significantly better than his defensive game, but he's still a heck of a player. And you have to get to the point where it's like, all right, well, we got to do something because we can't stop him, right? And Marchand was doing his best out there. I'll say that. Oh, the one thing about the Carolina-New York series, I wanted to see the handshake between DeAngelo and Georgiev, because that's who had the falling out.
Yeah.
And they cut it right as they were about to shake hands, is when they cut the feed and showed fans in the stands instead.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's when Hockey Night in Canada did it right. Remember 2014? Milan Lucic and the Habs?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Hockey Night in Canada was like, we are not missing this.
Right. Yeah. That's the benefit you have up there where we get stuck with ESPN.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I say this because I love Ray Ferraro. I think ESPN has great analysts and at least ringside reporting. Of course, they have Emily Kaplan, and I know Greg Wyshynski's never at the games, but I think Wyshynski's a fun character. I love Marek Wyshynski back in the days. TNT's been pretty good too. I like the panel a little bit, but I'm sorry, I'm maybe a little partial. I listen to a lot more. I feel like, Brownie, you can correct me on this if I'm missing one of the big sports stations and sports radio shows up in the Northeast over there, but I feel like for some reason some Canadian, sports radio shows are a lot calmer sometimes. Even when things get a little crazy for like the Maple Leafs or Montreal, whatever, I don't see them lose their minds and start throwing stuff in the studio. I might be wrong with some shows up in your neck of the woods there, but it seems like they're a lot calmer when things go awry, at least on the surface.
Well, what's interesting you say that is because we have the two like polar opposites, and you talk about throwing things. Cam Neely is notorious for throwing stuff in the box when something goes bad.
Was that the 2019 series when the coffee cup hit the wall there?
He's throwing water bottles. Him and Jordan Binnington are doing they're playing cornhole with water bottles.
Yeah.
But Sean McDonough he's been the lead, him and Ferraro for ESPN. And Sean McDonough's a Boston guy, but him and Jack Edwards, they're polar opposites with their approaches. I love Jack, but McDonough is just so calm and even, and that's why he's the national guy.
Jack, remember Jack was back in the 2000s, yeah?
Yeah, but he really ramps it up for the home. And I love it as a homer. I love having a hometown. That's what, Derek Sanderson back in the day used to do his keys to the game. And it was like, we got to score more than them. We got to not let up goals and skate. It's like, all right, well, that was very insightful. Well, but I think they just run out of things to say. Like Ray Ferraro last night, when they were talking about the goalie duel, he opened the ESPN broadcast by going, well, Sean, they're at opposite ends of the rink and they're really not playing against each other. And, that's the insight we tune into for ESPN.
No, and it's, it's funny you mention that because I had to listen to some of the Edmonton Colorado game and Jack Michaels is a friend of the show here, Edmonton Oilers broadcaster, lovely guy, American on a Canadian team. Kind of funny how that worked out, but his color guy Bob Stauffer had a couple of interesting lines during that first game, and I was messaging Janner. I don't want to repeat what he said because it could be taken severely out of context, but Janner and I had a good laugh about it because some guy, homers are like that, and I myself, I like to think of myself as a homer, but a guy that notices the other team from time to time. That's why Jack and I have never seen eye to eye. Also, because I'm 6'2" and he's not. That's another thing that seeing eye to eye. Ked says Tampa better stay off the Trouba tracks. And that's, what's funny, that's a crazy thing to think about now, Brownie, because I remember when Trouba, the year he played at Michigan, I didn't think it was that long ago, but then I have to realize how many years he's already been in New York, let alone in the entire NHL. Trouba is a veteran on this young Rangers team. How do you think he's really, he's obviously fit in really well. He's a top, pair of defensemen in this league anyways. We knew that back with Winnipeg, but how has he really made a huge impact for this blue line?
Well, I think the biggest thing with Trouba is that he lets Keandre Miller grow into his game, right? And Ked and I were talking about this. Trouba is a force of nature. I got some Pittsburgh fans that are not fans of Trouba, obviously, but he's a nail gun just waiting to find a 2x4 out there, and his presence and his defensive responsibility gives Keandre Miller that opportunity. We were talking about it. I noticed it. I didn't notice it last night, but I noticed it in the Hurricanes game. He gaps up and lets it widen. And it's almost like playing beer league. And he kind of lays back in the weeds and then jumps the pass like you can do in a beer league pickup game. But he's in the NHL. And at first I'm like,
bigger,
at first I was watching him and I was like, is that accidental? But I think he does it on purpose. And he's just, you can almost see this guy become into the spotlight and become this top defenseman as the games progress. And I think it's because he has Jacob Trouba minding the back end, making sure everything's calm. And a lot of guys on the ice have to be cognizant of where Trouba is. It's almost like with Charlie. Ken hates it when I relate everything back to the Bruins, but it's almost like the way Charlie McAvoy developed playing with Chara. It's the same kind of thing. You know, you can make your mistakes because I got you. And I think Trouba, and then the fact that they got Vetrano in, and Vetrano and Trouba are buddies from way back in the day, just makes it even better for all of them. Yeah, I think he's a good steadying influence, and I think on most teams they'd be the top pair, Trouba and Miller.
Yeah, no, that's, and I love Keandre Miller. I was talking about that with Allan too. I think he's going to be something because he's got size, he's got speed, and he's got hands too. Really random. You ready for this? Is probably the random thing I'd probably see on Twitter today. I'm here, we're looking at the Twitter feed. I just refreshed it to see if any news popped up because, welcome to the NHL. We learned like Darcy Kemper's not starting tonight. I'll get your thoughts here on that series here in just a moment, Brownie. Fight TV asks, who is your favorite NHL team? Now, of course, Fight TV, which took care of the Ice Wars that hosted, and big part of the World Hockey Report we were. But Fight TV asking people what your favorite NHL team is. I find that just very funny. It's very random as well. What do you think?
I mean, are they asking? Is there a reason? Is there like a motive behind the question? Like, are they trying to?
I'm not sure. Because like I said, they had the Ice War show that was hosted by AJ Galante, of the Danbury Trashers, and that was broadcasted on Fight TV. But that was about 2 weeks ago now. I'm just like, very interesting question. Fight TV get interested in the hockey game. Maybe they don't have any shows to promote this week, so they just like random sport.
Yeah, I wonder if they're trying to gauge the interest in the physical heavy teams, and if you get more of that, and maybe that's the trying to maybe pull guys from those teams for more Ice Wars. I don't know.
I will say this: if Fight TV was ever going to talk about hockey, I mean, let's go back to 1990s IHL when I used to go to Griffins games back in the day. Any game against the Chicago Wolves and Orlando Solar Bears was 4.5 hours, 200 penalty minutes. Like those were the days. Who was I talking to? Was it? Oh man, we were talking about something about 90s hockey. I can't remember what it was, but how we miss it. There's certain things that we miss about 90s hockey, and obviously, there's obviously the negative connotation with fighting these days, and is it, does it be allowed in the game? I still think it does, but
for sure.
The amount that there was back in the day, especially in the minor leagues, there was the story of you'd go to see the fights and a hockey game broke out. That's how it was back, in my childhood, and obviously, for a lot of younger people days, that's how it was. And I will say maybe that's why I like the playoffs a little bit, because you're less likely to see it. Obviously, the end of last night's game is a different story, but I don't know. Seems like the playoffs, they just say, all right, go play. What do you think?
I think to a degree, I mean, personally, I like it when the stripes stay out of the way and let sorry, my dog just went ballistic upstairs.
Oh, no, my dog's right underneath me. I'm waiting for anyone to knock the door or someone walk by, because we're going to get a good old corgi yelp.
I like it when the stripes get out of the way, let the players play. Last night was just a bubbling over, and Barclay Goodrow seemed to be in the mix of a lot of it. And there could be, I mean, you don't get along with everybody you play with, so there could be some resentment rolled over from when he was with Tampa. For all we know, no one knows what goes on behind the locker room doors. But you were talking about the 90s. During the pandemic, the local Nesson here showed the 2011 Cup run for the Bruins, and they showed them in order. And I remember watching those games because there was nothing, else, no other sports on really.
Right.
And watching those games, it was like suspension. It's and that was only 10 years ago, 11 years ago. I mean, Bergeron was hitting people like Scott Stevens in my mind's eye. It was unbelievable. So the game has changed quite a bit. I think there'll always be a place for fighting. I mean, they're never going to get rid of it because the players don't want to get rid of it, and it puts fans in the seats. They talk about no fighting and getting all the headshots out of it, but you go to any NHL game and what's on the Jumbotron in the warm-ups? It's all big hits and fights. Yeah, that's all it is.
Yeah, and it's funny, you mentioned 2011, of course, and I still remember the Aaron Rome hit and on Nathan Horton, and when I was watching, I will admit, don't get mad at me, Brownie, I've been a Luongo fan since his days in Florida. I have a the original Florida Panthers blue logo that's the one he wore, and I have that in my closet. Doesn't fit me anymore, but I still have it. But I remember I was cheering from that series, and when Rome threw that hit and knocked out Horton, the playoffs that he was having, I said to myself, Canucks have this. They didn't, but I really thought that was a turning point in the series, and it just seemed like the Bruins, just talking about kind of rallied around that. And shoot, if Bobby Orr's, flying your flag the next game, I think that's probably a good sign.
Right. Yeah. Well, and Nathan Horton spraying the Garden Ice in Vancouver, with the Boston water and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for Game 7. Yeah.
But all that stuff, you never know what kind of idiotic thing is going to galvanize a group of any people. It's not just hockey players. It could be, people in your office. It could be your flag football team, buddies you golf with. I mean, who knows? It could be the stupidest thing. Like you were talking about the Panthers. I was living down the Florida Keys during the Year of the Rat, during that run.
Oh, wow.
And that whole thing was because Scott Mellenby took a clapper with a mouse off the wall of the locker room, and that became this huge rallying cry. It's a stupid thing, but the fans got into it. The team fed off of it, and you never know what it's going to take to do that.
Yeah, it's so funny you mentioned that because everyone's like, oh, it was the rat trick. I'm like, you probably know it was just like some small little house mouse or something. It wasn't like not this big, mean Brooklyn-sized or Bronx-sized rat coming at
like a giant wharf rat.
This little thing that I used to catch in a trap or whatever.
Well, you could say that for Mellenby to hit it with a one-timer, it had to be pretty good size, right?
You're right. It had to have had some girth to it for him to make contact and be effective enough to do
right.
To decapitate and kill it. Rangers and Kings 456 says go Rangers. Wow, a person who is openly fans of two teams on YouTube. That's dangerous, Brownie. That's a recipe for some clapbacks in that direction, eh?
What are his teams?
He says go Rangers, and it's Rangers and Kings.
Oh, well, different conferences, right? I mean,
right? Yeah, you play twice a year, and well. Okay, I want to see if this person, how they're still listening. How was 2014 for this person? That's what I must know now. I need the answers now, Brownie.
Hey, listen, I'm long been Jerome McGinley worshiper,
yeah, and
to the point where it's almost embarrassing. And Calgary was always my Western Conference team because of him, and the logo and everything. And we have our one of our writers who lives out there, and he's a Calgary. Well, he's a Calgary guy now because he fired the Blackhawks during their whole snafu this year. But yeah, I've always wanted to go to a game out there. So the twice a year, I'd always make sure that one of those games I was at to see Jerome play in person. So I get it to a degree. I mean, it'd be one thing if you were like, oh, I'm a Bruins and Sabres fan. I mean, that's a little,
I love the Adams division. I love everyone the same. Everyone has fun. Like, no, then you're not a fan. Rangers and Kings says crazy in regards to 2014. At least it ended fast. At least you have to go to a Game 7 and sit flip a quarter and be like, and we're going Rangers tonight. That would have. Well, I couldn't imagine doing that.
You talk about the games now. If you, as a Toronto fan, you don't have a dog in the race, right? Same with me.
That's why it's much fun. It's so much easier.
Yeah, and I want every series to go 7. I just greedy. You want more hockey.
Yeah, and it's funny. So I listened to a lot of the Jeff Merrick show, and of course 32 Thoughts as well. And Jeff Merrick always says, I don't cheer for teams. I cheer for players. I cheer for stories. And once the Leafs get eliminated in the first round, because that's how it is, I try to pick who I would like to see win, which player. And that's why my father, I was born a Red Wings fan, and my father is still a diehard Red Wings fan. So when I told him I was, I would not be angry if Colorado won at all, he almost had a heart attack and died right there. But I explained to him, like, Dad, Nazem Kadri's on that team. And Nazem he's one of my favorite players ever. So I'm like, that's the reason why. If the Oilers make it, awesome. It'd be a great story of Western Canada. And of course, for the city of champions that the literal government decided they don't want to call themselves that anymore. But that's another tale for a different time. I'm sure Cody Janzen can get a little crazy with that. Rangers and King says, I was from New York, but now I'm in LA, so that's why I like both. Gotcha. Okay. It's
fair enough.
It's an area thing. Yeah. I got it. I will say it'd be tough if I somehow had to move to Buffalo. That would be quite a stretch to be like, I'll be a Buffalo fan and Toronto fan. I do.
Yeah, that one's a tough one.
I will say this. I'm a broadcaster. I love listening to certain broadcasters. You know what? Now he's retired, but if I was a Buffalo fan because of Rick Jeanneret, I think that's a good way to explain it. One of the best for sure.
That's fair. Yeah.
And of course, you talk about the Rangers. They have Sam Rosen and Kenny Albert does the radio. Gosh, Sam's getting up there, eh? He's probably only got a few more years left in him. You think?
Well, don't start talking about that too much. Ked'll be rocking in a corner, crying himself to sleep somewhere if you start talking about that retirement.
Oh man, it'll listen. A time will come. Like I talk to my Detroit buddies all the time, and we know Ken Daniels will eventually retire, and Mickey Redmond has had health problems for the last decade, and so for them, it's a lot of. I mean, that's probably the best thing to say because there are some teams that have. I don't want to say how am I say this without sounding like a jerk. Ked says the Raiders do retirement ceremonies the right way. I agree with Ked. You are 100% correct on that. They do those correctly. So when the time comes for Mr. Rosen, it'll be done right. But to say that, though, because there are some teams I say have generic broadcasters, guys that literally aren't, named to face kind of broadcasters, not like a Sammy Rosen or in Toronto, there's Joe Bowen or there was Bob Cole for many years. Like at least, it's, Boston as well. I mentioned Jack Edwards. Guys that are so good at their craft that it's like they are their own character. They're not just a broadcaster for a team. They just say their name and we know who they are. Like that's
right.
That's why I think maybe we should pinch ourselves and consider ourselves lucky that there are those kind of great broadcasters calling not just games nationally, but games for the local teams as well.
Yeah, it's funny is we're super spoiled here in Boston because there was Johnny Pearson and Fred Cusick, and then Derek Sanderson was color, and then Jack and Brickley does a great job, Andy Brickley. And on the radio side of it, Bob Beers has been the color for a long time. And
North Arizona legend, by the way.
Yeah. And Dave Gosher, who is now in Vegas. Gosh was the, get the duck boats ready. Just a great call, and though we just have been very, and then for, you had Jerry Remy for the Red Sox and Johnny Most back in the day for the Celtics, who were just bigger, larger than life characters.
Johnny Most, oh my gosh.
Yeah, well, he had the worst voice for radio, right? But he was great.
The guy that smoked two packs a day.
Those are Marlboro Reds right there. That's what that was.
Man.
Yeah.
Andrew Beauchamp asked, what are we talking about? Andrew, we're talking about some of our favorite legendary broadcasters. You mentioned Rose. Have you watched any of that Winning Time, that LA Lakers show on HBO?
Oh, on HBO, I have not.
So there's a scene when they go play the Celtics, and a lot of it's fabricated, and it's like Jerry West has come out like condemning it, and the train, like a lot of people are hating on the show of how incorrect it is. But they mentioned Johnny, and because they have the I forget the LA Lakers broadcaster at the time, but they show them both broadcasting, like the actors playing them, and they show like the Johnny's name in the title, and he's like, and it said Johnny, and I think it said something like miserable POS or something like that underneath it, or like something like that. I just remember laughing because I'm like I said, I grew up in Detroit sports, and I watched the old Bad Boys 30 for 30. And it showed the scene when Bill Laimbeer took down Larry Bird, and it just shows Johnny like having a heart attack and a stroke on the sideline, going crazy.
Well, it's like Jack. It's basically Jack Edwards now. It's the same thing. There's many videos of Jack Edwards. Younger. Right, Jack Edwards jumping up and down, and you could see Brickley kind of moving away a little bit in the booth, like, all right, settle down.
I like Andrew Beauchamp says I like Bob Dylan. He's so good. Different voice. So we're talking about broadcasters, not musicians. If we went to musicians, probably that'd be another long show here with Brownie here on World Hockey Report. But yeah, no, there's so many good ones. I will say though, I hate when guys go full, and this is how I describe broadcasters like this. I call it SEC football. Like that guys that just get angry. And I don't know if you saw the clip that ran around, but when Colorado was playing St. Louis, Game 5, when Robert Thomas tied it up at the end, right after Nathan McKinnon had that crazy goal, you just hear the Avs broadcasters like just get angry that they scored, and I'm just like, because like Mark Moser's doing color for them now because he's not on TV and whatever, and Nick Alberga, who we had on the show, actually texted Mark Moser during the game and said, "Hey buddy, how you doing?" Like jokingly at him because they tied it up, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't know, I feel like that it's funny, it's entertaining, but like I couldn't get myself to do that if I was on the air. I don't know. But like I said, everyone has their own favorite team. I did get into a little bit of a Twitter back and forth with Altitude Sports once, so I probably never have to work there anyways. Well,
one thing I will say, though, is I feel like these guys, when they like take Jack Edwards, for example, he's doing 82 games a year. And I think a lot of times he knows what he's going to say and he has thoughts in his head. But I feel like they just get caught up in it and they're so invested. in the team and in the game that it's like you watch it at home, but out loud. And I think that's what happens sometimes with these guys.
Yeah.
Especially when when they used to travel with the teams and they're around the team all the time, it's, they're buddies and they become friends. And yeah, I think I'd be horrible if I was on press row. I would be horrible. So
that's
I wouldn't be yelling shoot, but I'd be yelling penalty or something,
Oh man. Well, my gosh, I listened to I was listening to when Michigan was in the playoffs. One of our local stations actually carries the Michigan hockey games, and their crew. There was a call that was missed. Apparently, I was listening, of course, so I couldn't tell you what happened. But it was just like they were just not happy about it. But that's why I give so much credit to baseball guys. Like 162 games, maybe a couple days off due to national broadcast, but like that's a lot of broadcasting. Dan McCarr came in the chat here, Brownie says, I'm sorry to hurt your feelings, but there really isn't anyone better at play-by-play than Doc Emmerich. And, I love Doc. And it's funny, he actually got his start in Port Huron, which is where I made my very brief pro hockey debut in Port Huron. I will say, though, maybe it's because I'm impartial because he got his real big break in Detroit, but I always loved Dave Strader. Dave Strader was one of my favorites, and he should be yours too, Brownie, because he called that Game 7 in 2013. So there you go. But I always loved Strader. It's unfortunate that he passed and left us too soon. But I figured I say he's still one of the most underrated broadcasters of all time. Who was one, Brownie, that national or local, whatever, that you thought never got enough love?
Oh.
We'll get to the playoffs. We'll get to Colorado and Edmonton. We'll wrap up here. This is important stuff we got to get to.
What's funny is it's almost like the whole mentality of you have to hate to lose more than you like to win, right?
Right.
So when in my mind, the broadcasters that come to mind are the guys I can't stand more than the guys I love, if that makes sense. So as great as Doc Emmerich was, he had Eddie with him, Edzo, and I cannot stand Edzo on broadcast. Cannot stand him. And so that's what always dragged Doc down to me. I would say currently, I really like Brian Boucher. I think he's great in between the benches. Yeah. I think he's fantastic. I like McDonough. And what's the guy? Is it one of the Alberts that does national?
Kenny,
nephew? Yeah. I think he's very good too. But in terms of like guys that don't get enough national credit, I got to stick with my homeboy Jack. Everybody calls him a homer, but you would love him if he was in your market.
Do you think if Jack was less homerish, he would still be doing national games too on the side like he was back before he joined the Bruins?
Probably, but I wonder if he doesn't want to.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing too. Like that's why you see guys like Brendan Burke, and you mentioned Kenny Albert because he does radio for the Rangers. Johnny Forsland for literally it seems like his entire career. Dave Strader was another. He would do Dallas games but also do national games. Like those guys have to put aside time to do one game for their team one night and then fly out after the game or the next morning to get out to the next game. So some guys just like staying home. It's very nice.
Well, not only that, but you have to learn the rosters. You have to do the interviews. You got to have all the anecdotes. You got to talk to all the guys, and it's multiple teams that you're gonna.
Dude, I believe that those guys do all the work too, but at the same token, like those companies probably have someone there to research. Like I know there's like NBC researchers. Andrew Beauchamp says Tampa will not get a three-peat this year. Avs turn to take the cup. That's probably the best way to segue in because we'll probably keep talking about broadcasters, Brownie, for the next 2.5 hours if Andrew didn't jump in here. He does say Larry Bird is unbelievable, 100%.
There you go.
But let's wrap it up here with your thoughts on the Western Conference Finals here. Game 2 tonight. We heard from Daniel Nugent-Bowman earlier, and we broke down the Oilers. But what do you think about Pavel Francouz getting in net tonight? This is, he's played in the playoffs before. He almost helped them win a series back in 2020. It's been a couple years, though, since he's had to be that number one guy in the playoffs. And, the way the Oilers really kind of fed off Kemper leaving the game on Tuesday, it seems like, maybe the Avs on the back end are primed for the picking with their backup in net.
Well, I haven't seen it. Have they said anything about the length of time that Kemper's going to be out?
No.
Or is it just one game?
Here's the problem. They have not said what it is. Of course, remember he had the eye injury against Nashville, and he did take a shot high It hit him in weird in the shoulder. I forgot who scored that goal for Edmonton, but it was a weird goal. I think it might have been Hyman. But long story short, it looked like that might have stunned him, so that's what it could be. But unfortunately, they're going to keep their card, knowing how Jared Bednar is. He's going to keep those cards to the chest. But no timetable yet.
So my thing with when Ken and I talked about this on the pod with in regards to Colorado, this whole series actually, it's like which goalie is going to turn into a bigger pumpkin. As great as Smith can be, he has those games where he just falls apart. And my whole take on Kemper is, as good as he is, he was not playing in a pressure situation. And the further they go, I'm talking about his time in Arizona, and where his numbers were great for a horrible team. But the further they go in this run, the more the spotlight becomes brighter. And is he going to be able to handle that pressure? In terms of him not playing tonight, I wonder if it doesn't really doesn't change Colorado's plan or their outlook. Is, they get the whole thing with the backups in, guys sometimes dial in a little more. We saw that here in Boston when Ullmark was for all intents and purposes, the starter. Every time Swayman got in, the team would kind of seem to tighter gaps, harder puck battles, stronger on the wall. There's that whole mentality.
Ullmark would have preferred that when he was in net, but
he definitely would have. And of course, every genius online is blaming Ullmark. But I think the team might kind of dial in a little more with the backup in net. I personally think it's going to be Colorado in 6. I just think this is their year. I think Nathan McKinnon's on a mission, and he doesn't care who he has to kill or maim to get there. And I just think Colorado's their year. They're too deep. They're just clicking, and you got to take into account, we talked about things that teams galvanize around. Look what Kadri and his family went through.
Yeah.
I mean, that'll get all the boys pulling in the same direction for sure,
And that's why I say I love Nazem Kadri, because he's been able to play through sorts of stuff like that. And, for the way things, of course, remember the last 2 Boston-Toronto series. If Kadri does not get suspended in either of those series, you know what? Maybe I'm a little bit less salty about the Leafs not make. They would actually won a playoff round, I believe. And then, of course, what happened last year when they hit with Justin Falk and got him knocked out there, and it hurt. I still think that hurt Colorado's chances in the next round against Vegas. And this is the Kadri that everyone expected in Toronto. Had he just not tried to kill somebody.
Actually, now that he's not in the blue and white, I actually don't. I don't mind Kadri. I actually like his game now.
That's how we all felt for that many years. We all knew he had something. It just unfortunately he had the red mist. Dare I quote Steve Dangle? He had the red mist, and it hurt him. And that's why seeing him, how he's contributed in this run during this season. And you know what? And the hard part is that knowing how the cap works and knowing how much Kadri is going to get offered by the Philadelphia Flyers, because the Flyers are blank check or whatever the heck you want to say.
Well, they got like $43 million under the cap or something ridiculous, right?
They're going to pay Kadri $8 million. It's going to be ridiculous. Yeah. Like, this is his. Realistically, unless he wants to go to a cup contender after this, because the Avs won't make it work because they have McKinnon in a year after this. He knows that this is his best chance to win a Stanley Cup. And I think a lot of the Avs, McKinnon, Landeskog, even younger Cale Makar, like those guys, like guys that have been there for a while, Burakovsky as well, they know that this is the best team to actually win the Cup before, the salary cap will come into play. And they're playing like it. And that's why I think, and Edmonton's great too. Edmonton knows that, they have everything's working for them right now. Mike Smith's coming up big. Obviously, Draisaitl and McDavid are having incredible years, and you're having Evander Kane, you have Nugent Hopkins chiming in. Zach Hyman is doing exactly what he did in Toronto, just beyond the first round.
Right.
It's shaping up to be this series of where 2 teams are determined to get it done now because they don't know if they can get back to this point next year.
Well, there's no way Edmonton has the same roster. Kane's not coming back for $2 million, right? There's not a chance on that. And that's why I think Kane and Kadri are both playing toe in the line. You have, generational wealth at stake. And, these guys are aware of that and they want to win, but they also got to make sure their livelihood. I just think Colorado's depth, I think that the offense they can generate from the back end is just going to be too much for Edmonton over the course of a series.
Yeah. What were your picks on this series? Andrew Beauchamp says, and McDavid, he is so hot. Yeah, he's so hot right now. He's only leading with 29 points and averaging well over 2 points per game. Gretzky and Lemieux numbers, no big deal.
We joke all the time that McDavid should be playing on a level above the NHL. You know, he needs a tougher league.
Like, I don't, and the problem is I don't know what could it be. Like, you could put Connor McDavid, like, so, you know, I'm a big hockey guru across the board. The Champions Hockey League is coming up here in a couple weeks. Like, when this thing's all said and done, put him on a Champions Hockey League team, put him on like the Belfast Giants, and have him just run that league through just so he can do something different instead of tear apart the NHL. 10 points a game, Connor McDavid, because he played on an English hockey team. Like, but what do you think?
Well,
how do you think this series is going to play out? I was, you know, now with knowledge of Darcy Kemper being healthy, I was maybe a little adventurous, and, you know, I didn't try to make Alberta mad, but I think I might have, at least the northern portion, saying Avs in 5, but I feel like that's going to be a bad pick now, the way, you know, with Pavel Francouz being there. What do you think? How do you think this series is going to end up?
I'm sticking with, even with Kemper out, I'm sticking with my Colorado in 6 pick. That was my original pick. Listen, I love watching the Oilers play. Calgary, the Battle of Alberta, make that a 15-game series, and I would have been fine with that.
It's a shame it ended in 5. It's a shame it ended.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, you want to talk about goalies that underperformed? I mean, where was the Markstrom from the regular season?
There's a lot of Pro Hockey Writers Association guys that are trying to change their Vezina votes. Probably, I guarantee you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Fair. But I think that Colorado, everything we talked about before, the roster that is not going to be together, the having the onus on them of this is their year for like the last 3 years, and now they got the pieces. And I honestly think that the difference maker will be the defensive scoring and the way that they can transition. I mean, they just, as fast as the Oilers are, they shift down when McDavid's off the ice, and he can't play all 60. I mean, right. He might try, but he can't.
Well, yeah, it's not like the NBA where guys will play 39 or 38 of the 40, 48 minutes or whatever it is, like, or 40 minutes of a 48-minute game. You have to take a break in hockey because it's a lot of skating, and if you want McDavid to be as fast as McDavid can be, like, you can't be like Phil Esposito and float around for 2-minute shifts.
Right.
No, you have to skate in today's game.
Although I will say this, if you told me right now that for the rest of the series you're going to have good Mike Smith, then it's a little different conversation. But you can't guarantee that.
The problem is Mike Smith doesn't even know if he's going to be great Mike Smith.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh man, I tell you, it's gonna be a fun one. Andrew says Avs in 7. That not a bad pick. I honestly, like, you could tell me any number of games for either team in the Eastern Conference. I think there's a good set for both teams, but like, you could say Edmonton in 5, Avs in 5, whatever. You could say whichever possible scenario, and I would believe you. Like, that's how
agreed
tight this series is. But at the same time, it could get out of hand. And I mentioned with Daniel Nugent-Bowman, like, if Edmonton doesn't win tonight, yes, you're going back to Edmonton for 3 and 4, but if the Oilers can't get it done, Brownie, Avs will be feeling pretty confident knowing they just have to really win one of the next 2 games after tonight.
You could actually make the argument that tonight's almost a must-win game for Edmonton.
Oh, you want me to go? You want me to bring out the John Madden? Well, if it's a must-win game tonight, what's tomorrow?
But I mean, you go down 2, and even though you're going home, like you said, if Colorado can steal 1, and if they don't win tonight against the backup goalie, then all that doubt starts to creep in their heads. I mean, they're still human as much as they're, some of them are, a little bit above human like McDavid, but all that, it's all, squeezing stick a little harder. You can't even score on the backup. We can't we letting up 5 goals a game. It's got to creep in. That doubt's got to creep in at some point.
100%. It'll be interesting to see. We've been chatting here with Adam Brownstein, Brownie from The Morning Skate. Be sure to follow him, guys, at abrow28, right? I had
yep.
Some. Yeah, abrow28 on Twitter. Of course, we tagged him on the show. You guys know where it is. Just go on us at World Hockey RPT. You got to follow us. Follow Morning Skate at morning_skate. Follow both him and Ked. They post as good as stuff, if not better than us at World Hockey Report. Cody Janzen's probably going to call me now and scream, "What do you mean?" No, man, I'm sorry. Don't take it personally. We do good stuff there. They do great stuff too. Everyone does great stuff here.
There's room for everybody.
There is room for everybody. As I talked to Allan before we had him on the show, and I said there's a million of us out there, and we're all different. We're all pretty good though. Thanks once again to Daniel Nugent-Bowman and Allan for coming on the show here today. Quickly though, before we go, guys, don't forget you can find the best player tracking information on Quack Stats. Follow them on social media and go check out their website and app for more. And if, of course, you miss any of the interview, if you're just joining us, I'm so sorry. I thought we made it clear we started at 1 o'clock Mountain Time, 3 o'clock Eastern Time. I'm sorry. Don't be angry at me, but you can go back, watch it on demand, either on the Hockey Podcast Network or 12 Ounce Sports, or if you don't want to see Brownie and I's ugly mugs, you can just go listen to us on the podcast forum. Thanks to the guys from the Hockey Podcast Network, Romy and the guys cutting it all up. Make sure you get it out there for you. Brownie, man, thank you very much. We could have definitely easily gone 2 more hours, unfortunately.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, man, absolutely. Any day, anytime, we'd love to have you on. You and Ked do great stuff, like we said, with the morning skate. We will see you all, though, next Tuesday. We'll be back with more awesome guests and more playoffs to talk about. 15-goal games? Maybe. I hope not as a former goaltender, but Brownie, hey, listen, it's the playoffs.
Bet the
it's
over,
hockey.
right?
Who the heck knows? All right, guys, we'll see you all next time here. Thanks for watching another episode of